Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the holidays and had a fun and safe New Year's celebration. I'm here with Jesse from Triggre, and Triggre and Codemap are wishing you all a happy and successful 2023. And we're excited to kick off this year with some big news from Triggre. So, without further ado, I'm going to let Jesse take over and tell you all about it. Hey, Jesse.
Yeah, cool. Hey. Yeah, thanks, Gordon. Well, I hope that the hangover has worn off by now for everyone, because it's been a couple of days. Should be sort of done by now. But yeah, indeed. First of all, a happy 2023, and we do have some big news. It's been, obviously we have a backlog like everyone else, right? And there's been this one feature that people have been requesting for a while, which, due to how our platform is built, was kind of hard to implement. But the good news is that today we're going to show you this feature, which we'll be releasing somewhere in the next weeks. So that's the big thing. And what it is well, we've called it webhooks, but basically, if I would explain it super simple, you can hook up Triggre with any REST API or HTTP API that you want. So that is pretty cool, because you get the processing power and all of the logic plus user interface plus the database that Triggre already has and the document generation, all those things. But now you can hook it up to anything that you want. And to sort of show you how that will work I have a short demo where I will take our own, which is a custom URL shortener. It's just a little program that we bought on the web and we've installed it. I think it's like a Python thing or something. And it has an API. So it's a custom API. It's not something that can work out of the box or whatever. It's a custom API. I have some documentation ready. We're going to implement just shortening a URL, and then I'll show you afterwards. I have some prepared examples with some more elaborate things. So let me get started with that. Let me share my screen. Here we go. So on the left here, I have two tabs. I have one sort of the application, but here we have the designer, and I have on the right here, this is my documentation. And in this documentation, basically what it is, like I said, it's a URL shortener. It's what we use to shorten our URL. So it's like trig.r, because Triggre. And the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna build a very simple URL shortener flow part. So for those that don't know Triggre works with your data, right? So you can design a data model. I have some things already set up, like the user standard. And then I have a short URL here that I've made. I can add fields easily if I want to. And this sort of tells the platform what data you want to store. Then we have flow parts, which are reusable processes. And so these reusable processes are now also able to call webhooks. And they can do a lot of other things. They can do calculations, decisions. You can make very complex processes about that. We had a different live stream a while ago with Goran that we show all that stuff. Yes, the tool is indeed named Triggre. Anders, that is really good. It's like, sometimes people say, like, hey, is it like Triggre or something? I'll go, exactly, just like it is Google. And then they understand. So yes, it's called Triggre.
That's a good one, yeah.
If Alex says that they don't see or hear anything, that should not be the case. But I think that it's solved because other people do seem to see things. Okay, so back to the tool. So these processes are reusable, as I said. Many people should, if you've tried Triggre, you'll know this. Automation flows are background processes. We don't have any now. I'll come to that in a moment. So these are like, let's say that you want to have something run once a day, or for example, when another application sends you data, this is how you do that. User flows then are the combination of a process and the user interface. So for example, This one is a simple one I've set up that we'll take a look at later. Combines a screen called short URLs. You can click a button called View Details. It will get some details for the short URL, show you those details on the screen. You click back and you end up on the short URLs page again. That's sort of the idea behind Triggre. So with that in mind, we're going to start with a flow part. And create a new one. So just going to start from scratch here. I have a new one, and we'll call it the fantastic name of shorten URL or something like that. Should be okay. Now, what we want to do, obviously, is we want to have some sort of input, a URL. Let's see, texts, and then we use URL. So we just have some URL, one URL. Let's call this one long URL. Right, so we have a process which has an input, and then we want to shorten that. So now we can add actions. And well, these are the things, if you know Triggre, you know these. You can add data, edit stuff, you can make decisions, you can delete stuff, lookup calculations, create documents, send emails, and connection. Now, connection used to already be here, but it's been sort of we've sort of added a feature here. So if you click next, now you can choose between SOAP, which we already had, but also webhook. Now it's still in beta. As you can see, it will be in beta for a little bit when we release it, just because I'm sad to say that we cannot test every single API out there. We tried, but there's just too many. So we'll release it in beta for a little bit. And then we get through these steps. Now this is just the normal thing that, you know, if you've used Triggre before, is like we do these things, all of these things work with wizards, and we ask like one or two little simple things at a time. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to shorten a URL, so we need to know how that works. Now, the first thing that you want to do is check out what type of request, right? So in the documentation over here on the right from our URL engine, our shortener, I'm going to say shorten a link, right? So this is what I want to do. So it says to shorten a link, you need to send a valid data in JSON via post request. Okay, and we have to send it to this URL. That seems easy enough. So we're going to take the URL, and just paste it here, and it's going to be post, right? So that's fairly simple. Go next. And then it has some authentication question. Now we can go back and we can read what authentication it has. So this one has, if I'm not mistaken, is bearer token. Yeah, your API key as an authorization token. And that is, you can see here, it says bearer. So this is a standard authentication mechanism. Now I've been smart and I've actually paired on a different screen my key so I can copy it. So we say here, we just say bearer token, and we go next, and we enter a specific value. You can even take a value from your process, right? So for example, if you have a multi-tenant system that you built, like maybe you built your own SaaS or something like that, you can also have this API key stored in the user's profile, for example. So you can use that specific user that is currently logged in, for example, you can use their token to connect with their shortener or their version of the shortener, their account. In this case, I'm going to use a specific value, and it's going to be this. I'll reset this after the live, just so that no one will fiddle around with our URL shortener. And then the next type is, okay, so how should the data be sent, right? And like I said, I think it was JSON, so we'll just check it here again, links, no links, so we'll go here. And it says what you can send, but here below, normally this would be on the right side, you usually have this this sort of an idea of what you can send and how it's done. It's JSON, so in this case, I'm just going to say that like application JSON, right? And then Triggre, it makes the screen a little bit bigger, and we can actually form that request. In this case, for the request itself, we have a lot of optional things. So you can see like the only thing that's required is a URL, and then you can have a lot of options like when does it expire and stuff. I'm not very interested in that for now, so I'm just going to add it here. So you can see that this sort of resembles the request like this, right? So we're going to just add a value here. We're going to take it from the flow part, and there's also custom stuff that I'll get into later. But we're going to take a value here, say the input, the URL that we just defined as an input, right? And this is like, look, what if that value is empty? Well, in this case, it doesn't really matter. It's never going to be empty, but just in case, we'll say send a specific value or do not include it. We'll just not include it. So it says that no data will be sent in that case. This is just to make sure that you have full control over these types of situations. And then this has to be called, I think it's URL, very simple. Okay, there we go. And now you can see that we have that URL in the body, and it looks similar to what you'd send here. So this should give you sort of a visual idea, if you have the documentation there, sort of what it looks like. This little world here, the little globy thing, that means that this is actually indeed a URL type field. So we're going to go further. And we can add additional query parameters and other things such as headers. And this screen is something that we're looking to update a little bit before we release it. So if you know a little bit about webhooks, the authentication will add headers. And we're going to make them sort of appear here so that you know that they're going to be sent. Whereas now it's empty, but those will be sent. But then we'll add them here, but uneditable, so that that setup is done for you. But you can also see, if you know a little bit more, those are actually sent. You can even send cookie values if you want to, because there are those weird APIs that work with cookies. We've not seen many of them, but they are there. So you can even do that if an API prefers that. Does it return data? Well, yes, it does. And then you can say, like, how does it return data? Well, in this case, it returns JSON. It says here server response, right? So this is a response and it's JSON. So we're going to say it is JSON. And again, we get the editor. And now we can actually format this. Now, we don't need to add all the values. We just need to add the ones that we're interested in. So in this case, I'm going to be like, okay, I want a specific type. So this, again, we'll get into later. Specific type, it's going to be a number because I want to have the ID. So I have an integer, whole number, and this is called ID, yeah. And that is added, and the same for the text, for the URL, which is called short URL. URL, let's not make a typo, that would be not handy. Okay, so now I have this, and I'm not defining the error thing because I'm just not interested in it right now, but I could. And if there's fields that you don't define here, or there are fields that you've defined but are not available, they'll just be empty. So that's fairly simple to handle. And then this will be called shorten URL. There we go. And now we have that function right there. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to store this to show that that's also possible. So I've made that data item before. I'm going to add this short URL. I have some fields here, so I'll say created is right now. Let's add that right now. The original URL, that is a URL that we've supplied. The long URL. We have a shortened URL, which is the result. And this is nice because I can select that from that call that we did. I can get the response. Now we're restructuring this a little bit before we really release it, but it shows you sort of like what you can get. So here you see we have the short URL. Now I only get the URL because the ID is a number. So if you know Triggre, then you'll see that, yeah, it only shows you the things that are compatible. So we'll go there, and then the ID, and you'll see some different numbers now because now it shows numbers. And the interesting part here is we also have the status code. So you can even, if you have if your call gives you an error, like a 401, for example, you're not allowed to see it, or something else, you can actually make logic in your process to handle that situation. For now, I'm not interested in that. I'm just going to assume that it's going to go well, which is a little bit of a risk, but I'll take it. But we're going to store the ID, which is that number. Now I fill all these fields, and it will just store this store URL. I'll just store it here on a local thing and end it here. And I want to add that URL as an output. So that's shortened URL here. Let's call it short URL. So this is how you can sort of make a very simple call. And then we want to make a user flow with this. I already have an example, but I'm going to quickly build a new one. So we want to have some page, right? So we have some page, shorten URL, this. And on this page, we want to have one form field, basically, which allows us to input the URL. So we make form field, one form field, which basically is this, a URL, long URL, or URL shorten, see even better. There we go. Help text, no, thank you. Here we go. Form field is going to be optional. Yes, it has to be there. And we don't want to pre-fill it. No. Okay, so we have that. Then we'll add some logic. So we'll add a little button here that says shorten URL. We'll submit that form. And we'll add a new process flow part that we just built to this flow. So now we're going to go and do our shorten URL that we just built, and it will request us for that long URL, which we just have on that page. So we'll just go here and say like, okay, take that URL to shorten from that page, send it to our process. Go, done, right? So super simple. And then we'll make another page to show that URL. So I'll add another page. URL. Make a back button so that we can do it multiple times. Go. And I'll show that URL right here. So let's show some detail. That is the, where was it? The process has a short URL we created. And it should show you then our shortened URL. So we'll rename this to URL shortener. We add it to our menu, and this is all it takes. So now we have a page where you can shorten a URL that will do that call, API call that we just built with our documentation. It will show it, and we can do that as many times as we like. So I'll quickly add this to our menu. I have this super nice Codemap menu here set up. Add this, boom. Now I already have that example, but we'll use our newly built one, obviously, and I will publish it. And so the nice thing about this, and this is what made it really tough to build, is that if you're already familiar with this, then this will not come as a surprise. But Triggre works in a way that it actually generates code, and then it uses that code to install the application on the server. So this actually generates that call in code, and you can actually also build your own API in Triggre, and that will actually also generate a coded API for other applications to call your API. That's done with automation flows that we'll take a look at in a second. But that is what makes it tough. But it also means that it's quite fast in execution. So that's the big upside. Okay, so now it's published. It's this page. I'll have to refresh this. And the first time it will take a second. And then we should see our new menu item show up, and we'll use it. So our URL shortener, right? Here we go. Let's see, Triggre.com, for example. Something like this. Shorten URL. Boom. It has this little link here, trig.rep/ and then a random name. Just to show you that it actually works. At least I hope so. Oh, what do you know? It works.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So this is how sort of the basics of it all works, and how you can call these things. Now, one really interesting thing is that I said, you can also build your own API, because obviously connecting custom systems, maybe you want to have something custom on the other end. So if you build any automation flow, I'm just going to really quickly pull this example. Or wait, you know what? Shorten the URL or something. If you have an automation flow, you can have a connection trigger as a start. And what this does is, this is already the same. This is basically the same as it was before. So you can add inputs. So you can say, like, look, let's if we shorten the URL, you can send some sort of URL, right? URL. But the difference is that now we'll also generate a whole REST API based on just your automation flow. So any automation flow that you build with a connection trigger will actually be converted into an API that other applications can call. So you can do decisions and processes here. So you can just take your own shorten URL thing that you've built, right, and even have it transfer this request to a different a different application, like we just did. So for example, this one, we can just reuse it here. And now any application can use our application to shorten the URL. And we can just do it like this. Now, obviously, this a little example doesn't make a lot of sense, because why wouldn't you just use directly the URL? But if you make this process more complicated, then it suddenly is very interesting that you can add a lot of functionality in this way, that you can open up to other applications in your company, for example. So this is a very simple way that this works. Now, I don't have time to show sort of calling this, but this is how you would do that. So you can have the incoming and the outgoing ones. And to show you an example of a little more extensive call, I have made this little thing which loads, well, it says all, but it's a couple, loads multiple of these short URLs. I think this is an interesting example. So check out this documentation. I'll go to the top because it's something like get links. Yeah, here, the list links. So basically what I've done, I've taken this one, which lists a number of links, and I've added that here into this this API. Now, what is interesting is you cannot say, like here, for example, option is date or something, because you can add them later on. So the search parameters and stuff like that, we don't do that like this, but we do it differently. So then in the next step, this is a bearer token, as you know before. It's the same, it's just the same key. And then here I have the additional query parameter. So the order here is date, just like they have here in the example, so that I get the latest ones. And then for the data, right? So it returns data, yes. And now it gets interesting, because now you can see that I've built this whole structure which actually returns multiple items. So if you look at the in the response here, it says, like, you have this error thing. I have that here. I have the data, which is a custom item. So this one, you can see, well, I can only rename it, but let me show you if I would add a new one. So if you'd add something here and you'd say it's a custom item, right? And then you can say, give it a name, like test. And then I can add values inside of there. If I would say it's a list, I can say, well, is it a list of texts or is it a list of custom items? Now, in this way, you can build the whole response. So I'll remove this one because obviously it doesn't send that. But you can see that I've done that here. So I've made a list URLs of custom items, which have a title and an ID and clicks and everything. And then the rest is just the same. So it's fairly simple. But then I have this repeat action. So I go through all of those results. As you can see, I go through everyone. I first look up if I've already loaded them before, so I don't do too many calls. And then I just add it to our database. That's basically the idea here. So I just loop through, as you can see here, I say, I get those short URLs and I loop through the URLs with, all the data that I've defined. So this way I can actually get a call with a list of items and just run through them. And to show you that that works, I have it here. So we have the short URLs, which has ours that we just created, right? So this one we created, but it has this button which loads it all, and that calls that process that we just looked at. And boom, it gets them from our server. And if we then want to show some details, right, there's also a call for that. So we go here and we say those links, get a single link. If you check this out, then it says get details for the link. This is interesting. Let's see if we can build this, because I believe that this works because I just showed you. But how about the details? This is interesting because it has something new that we haven't seen, and it's this ID thing in the URL here, right? And this is something that we've also built. So if we go back, I'll show you another one because I prepared this because it's a little bit more clicking. It is, where's the details here? Get short URL details. Super simple, right? It's literally just a call and then it has all the outputs, but I want to show you the call. So this webhook has a short URL ID here, and you can add that by clicking this button. So let's say that I have another slash. I say, okay, I want to add something. What do I want to add? Well, short URL ID, right? So I did that. I'm not going to do it again. This has to go like this. But this is how you can sort of supply an ID, put it into the URL, and you get the results. So again, same thing, bearer token. We know this by now. And then the result, we'll see that here. Yes, JSON, whole result thing that I've built, similar to the other ones, but different fields, right? So it corresponds to what you see here. Obviously, as you can see, I've left out many fields because they're not very interesting to me, so I just left them out. We get those details, and I return them in a output list here just to show them on a screen. So then I have that user flow with the short URLs that we just saw. It's this one. If I click get short URL details, I give it the ID of the thing that's on the screen, and then it should show us the details like the title, description, clicks, etc. So let's see if that works. I know that there's one that actually works. This one has a description. So here we have view details, for example, and you can see that, well, not description, but title. You can see that it actually returns data from the server. Like others can also be like this, right? This has a description. So this is how you can really easily get data from, like, literally just dynamic. I don't even have to store it. I can just show it on the screen right away, and that is it. So this is the big feature, and I think that the nicest thing about this versus what we had before is Zapier and also like SOAP. SOAP is used in like more enterprise level companies and everything. It's nice. It's very structured, but everything is moving to REST APIs, webhooks, HTTP APIs. And the big power here is that you can do a lot of processing, and as well at the same time do like multiple calls. Like for example, do a call, check something in the call, and if it's one, then you do this other call. If it's two, you do that other call. So you can make very complex systems that you actually then build into automated processes and everything. So it's extremely powerful. And I suggest that you, if you don't have it already, get a free account, because we'll soon be be communicating this obviously to everyone when it's released, and you can play around with it and see for yourself what what you can do with it. There's a lot of possibilities, more than I can name, I think. You seem a little bit quiet, Goran.
No, I mean, this is all amazing. And I think the audience should know that I'm looking at this for the first time. So I'm processing things, in real time.
Yeah.
So, no, I think this is amazing. And this really opens up Triggre a lot. I can imagine business owners wanting to use Triggre more for different kinds of use cases, because they know that now they have this option as well. Do you have any idea on which webhooks or API calls will be used the most? Do you have any idea? Because obviously you haven't launched the thing yet, but I'm interested in that. What do you think is going to be the most requested feature connection?
Yeah, that's really tough, because people have asked like a lot of different things. So it's I'm not certain to say which one's going to be used the most. I actually, to make this example, I actually looked up like most used web APIs or something along those lines, and I think URL shortener came up, and I was like, oh, we have one. Let's use that, because everyone understands the concept, so we don't have to explain the concept. But I think there's a lot of systems like here in the Netherlands, for example, people have certain bookkeeping systems. And some of them are very Dutch, but they do have an API, so you can hook them up to your processes, like to check bookings when they come in and stuff like that. Make a webhook for that. So there's a lot of these things that you can do, but yeah, it's hard to say right now. I'm actually as curious as you are to see which ones are going to be used most in that sense. Also. Manasseh says that it's great content, and he's waiting for his approval to get jobs. So thank you so much. Yeah, it's good to hear. Yeah. Anything else that you want to know going on?
Well, actually more of an observation than a question, but want to hear your thoughts on it as well. As I said, this looks like it's going to really open Triggre up to a lot more combinations, possibilities. A lot more companies are going to look to use it, and they're going to play around with it. And I can imagine they might get stuck with some of these connections. So that will, I think, increase a number of Triggre experts that will be in demand for sure as well. So I think you have a whole ecosystem growing within Triggre with this one. I think you can expect that in the following months. Definitely.
And the nice thing is that we actually have a community that you can log into if you have your free account. I mean, you can just read it, obviously, but if you have your free account, you can actually log in with the ID that you use to log into your designer and everything. So if you have a question, you can drop it here. Other people that have knowledge of Triggre can help you. We have a lot of people actually, like Ronald helps people from time to time, but we're also here, like my colleague Eddie, this is him, this is me. We're also here helping out. So any questions, you can just ask, and we'll happily help. It's also for us to improve the feature, obviously. Yeah, in terms of the span that you can do with it, yeah, I also think that it's more powerful than we can even think now, because it's usually like the creativity of the people that use it, that want to build a process that opens it up. I see a question coming in here from Thomas, so I'll quickly answer. I just happen to have the chat open, so it pops up. So sure. He says, with what Triggre plans will the API be available? Well, I have some good news for you. It will be available on all plans to start with, for sure, because it's something that I think for us, this is one of the things that really shows the value that Triggre offers. So there's not any reason for us to sort of limit this in plans. It's actually one of those things that I think that most people should be able to use. So it's going to be everything. And Sylvester says it's a really value-adding feature. Thanks. I think so too. And like I said, I'm really interested in seeing what people use it for. So yeah, so this should be included in all the plans. This is why I said get a free account. We'll release it for the free accounts as well, because I mean, this is not something. If you have a question, like you have an idea for some business, right, and it needs to connect to something, and you want to just try it out, then I feel that you should be able to at least try that. Like the kind of features that we sort of move towards the higher paying models are more the business features. So, for example, stuff like we have like audit logs that are interested for companies that have to, if something goes on, they have to provide like changes in their application. When was the change by who? Blah blah blah. That's all automated in our platform. But that is a good example of a feature that will be in a higher payment plan. But these kinds of things will be available for everyone. Yeah. Let's see. We had some other questions I see coming in. And these ones I can actually click, so that's nice. Okay, cool. Here we go. So, do you have more examples of connections you have made? Well, not right now here, but I know that during testing, we built a list of some things. So there's this, the most simple one that we have is called VAT layer. This is something that might be interesting for a lot of people here actually doing business. VAT layer allows you, it's for Europeans. Sorry if you're from the US. But VAT layer allows you to check a VAT number. So we actually use that. But VAT layer is a simple one. You just send it a VAT number and it says, is it correct or not? We've also integrated it with, I think that my colleagues did Stripe. What else did we do? Molly, if you know that, it's a payment platform as well. Well, those kinds of things, and they're fairly similar to what you see on this with the responses and everything, except that, for example, I think that Stripe formats its data differently, so it doesn't accept JSON, but it accepts, I think, form encoded. Anyway, that's something that we also support. So those are some of the examples. Let's see. Meg asks, is there a limit to the amount of data that we can receive? No, in general, like obviously the more data you receive, it might like have to download it for longer. But if you define a list, it just depends on how much the server sends you. So for example, those URLs, if it would send us 1,000 URLs, it will receive 1,000 URLs. That's all fine. So there's not really a limit in that sense, in terms of the data that you can receive. And there's definitely not a limit that we impose, like saying like, oh, you know, as soon as you've hit like 100 kilobytes or something, then we'll stop serving you. So you're free to receive bigger calls. Yeah. Let's see, what's this one? Can I use webhooks with internal applications too, or just with public SaaS? Well, I mean, you saw arguably our URL shortener is public. So yes, you can use a public SaaS, obviously, but also with internal tools, as long as they are reachable from our data centers. So if you have something, for example, that's behind a firewall or whatever, as long as you can open it up to our data center, then it will work. And I think that that's actually one of the really powerful features, because many of our customers hook up internal applications, some even like very custom to Triggre. So yeah, as long as it has some sort of web HTTP API, you can hook it up with this feature for sure. This one by Brian, how much does it cost to use webhooks? Well, the good news is that you can start using it for free. But if you know how our model works, our pricing model is based on actions. So then obviously you ask, well, what is an action? Good question. Let me see if I can answer this. So an action in our designer basically means anytime that you call one of these little things, like this is an action, this is an action, this is an action. Decisions are actually not actions, I think. So you can actually just use them, and you get 1,000 actions for free. So that's at least so that's 1,000 calls. Now you do some actions around that, like show a screen and stuff. But you get 1,000 for free, and if you if you do some exercises to learn Triggre, actually, you get more. So you can up it to about 4,000 actions for free per month. That should be more than enough to build a test application, sort of see what it does, play around, have some fun with it. And then it starts at very low pricing. So it's actually very cheap to use these webhooks. It's not an extra paid feature or anything like that. Let's see. Plans. Thanks. Someone says that it's Bauer here says that it's an essential feature. I agree, and that he likes the ease of use. It's nice. I can show these actually. You see, Vincent says that it's a great feature which makes it easier to integrate with other solutions without any other. Yes, indeed. Yeah, this is indeed one of the main things. And yes, one action is same as one API call and response. Yes, so it's in that sense, like I said, you get 1,000 for free, 4,000 if you handle some of those exercises. So it's actually very cheap, and that's how that works. I think that this is what we have on the chat. Do you have any more questions going on? Because you've had some time to let them simmer. So
no, I'm just really looking forward to seeing what can be built with this. So definitely gonna check out your up and coming case studies and use cases, because I think this is one of the features that will, I think. The stuff that people will build with this, I'm guessing it might even surprise you, even though you know what Triggre is capable of course. But I think this opens it up a lot. It's super interesting.
Yeah.
To see how it goes. Yeah.
Thomas asks, do you plan other integrations besides Zapier, like Pabbly? Well, for now, we don't. And one of the main reasons is we have Zapier, obviously, as you say, but people have said, like, look, it's a little bit of a thing where, one, it's not synchronous with Zapier, so that's one of the problems. And the second is that for business critical applications, which is what we focus on, it becomes fairly expensive very quickly for people, especially if you send a lot of data back and forth. And this is one of the main reasons that we built this feature, is that it's a little bit costly. So we're not actively looking at integrating Pabbly or other things. So for now, it's going to be this or Zapier, because we see that there's a lot more requests for this. So I would prefer to make these even simpler to use. I think that the team did a fantastic job to make it as simple to use and sort of stick as close to the philosophy of Triggre as we could, while also sort of opening up a more technical feature, I would say. Like, yeah, obviously, he also says, like, for people that are not as API savvy or tech savvy, or what you want to call it. So that is true. It's a little bit harder to use than other things, but I think that that this is exactly also where, for our customers, we see the added value of our partners. Integrations always are more sort of complex than just making some screens and some processes to save and store some data. But this is exactly why, for example, some of our partners in the channel here also, like, they help you also with thinking about how can you optimally structure that. So this is why we actually always hook up customers that have a business idea with a partner. They can do parts themselves, they can do parts with the partner. And usually when integration comes around the corner, that's the time where you go, like, okay, let's really think about this. And then having a feature like this is way more powerful than us building another 3, 4, 5 of those integration platforms, no matter how cool they are, because I love them, but it's also a lot of work to build Yeah, and we sort of struck on that point of why we implemented this. Like I said, it's it's one, the fact that Zapier will get expensive for business critical stuff for lots of data. But one other thing is that I briefly said it's asynchronous. It's sort of really asynchronous, and this implementation you can build it both synchronously and asynchronously. So what I mean by that is you can make a flow part with multiple calls, and you can hang it inside of a user flow, and the user flow will only continue once that whole process is completed. So even if you do 4, 5, 6 calls in a row, or like a whole bunch of them, then you know that the data is ready as soon as that process finishes, and you can show it in the page. With Zapier, that worked differently because it had to be done on sort of an event, and then you have to wait for Zapier. So you had no idea of like when Zapier handled your request. So this is, in that sense, the synchronous variant of it. And then obviously you can work with a webhook of your own with the automation flows to make an asynchronous call. So you can say like, okay, I send a call and it returns immediately and it does some processing. And after it's done processing, it will call a other callback, a webhook, and that's how you can make it asynchronous from the other side. So this actually supports both those scenarios, which is something that I believe will make it more straightforward to see the logic in your application, right? So it's like, it does this, then it does this, then it does this, and it sort of shows you in the visual way the logic. Whereas with the Zapier connection right now, you'd also have to sort of know, like, oh, if this record gets created, then the Zap starts, or if this record gets updated, then this will happen. So that's a big advantage, I feel, of this implementation. So yeah, so there you have it. I think if that's all the questions, I see no more questions. At least I don't think that I've missed any in the chat. Goran, if there's anything that you have, and otherwise, yeah, I'm going to go back to helping the team get this on the road.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, this is it from my end as well. But some pretty amazing stuff, and I can't look. I'm looking forward to testing it out on my own, and as I said, seeing some use cases, case studies, and what people will think of themselves. I think it's. I mean, I just want to congratulate you because this is you've done an amazing job. I'm guessing it was for the past year. You kept this.
Yeah.
Quiet and we're developing it. So really congrats on this and looking forward to seeing it in action as soon as possible. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That is true. We've indeed been working hard on this for a long time. As you can see, it's fairly complex to make it this simple, I feel.
Yeah.
So I hope that people actually will find it simple as well. And I'm also sure that we'll find a lot of improvements to still build. We have some ideas actually to further improve the simplicity towards the future. But yeah, it's going to be released soon. So make sure that you have a free account so that you get the updated emails that Marta always sends when something new is coming out. So that you're one of the first to use this. It's all for free to start, so that shouldn't be a hurdle. Cool. Yeah. That's it for me then, Goran. Let's end it here then.
Sure. Yeah, that's it. Thanks everybody for joining and looking forward to seeing the feature go live.
Thanks. Bye everyone.
Bye everybody. Cheers.